Hello and welcome to the Nexus. Today's show, Oprah. She is one of the most famous talk show hosts in the world, but does she have what it takes to be President of the United States? We are focusing on three things then. Oprah's incredible rags to riches story. We look at how she went from a simple country girl to now possibly being richer than Donald Trump. Oprah for president. Well, what might her campaign look like if she ran? And could she survive the long political battles? And from star to power. Do actors and pop singers make good leaders? And does America really need another celebrity president? We're going to be finding out all of that and more here in the Nexus. Hello, I'm Matthew Moore, and today in the Nexus, it is Oprah Winfrey. Now, President Trump says he could beat her if she ran against him in 2020, but is she even up for the fight? We're going to be asking our three guests. Professor Samara Klar. Now, she's been researching what voters like and don't like. Professor Scott Lucas, he can help us work out if celebrities make good leaders. And we'll be examining Oprah's money and power with the journalist Laurie Laird. So first up, let's take a quick look at Oprah's extraordinary life, how she went from dirt poor to become the woman that everyone is talking about.
Oprah Winfrey's speech at the Golden Globe Awards earlier this month roused calls for her to run for president.
The tweets about her and a possible run for president in 2020.
Two of her close friends told CNN she is actively thinking about running for president.
Oprah, our future president, was...
She has my vote. Yeah? She has 200 of my votes.
She knows how to build bridges to a more empathic future.
The State of the Union is strong!
Everybody knows my story as a poor Negro child growing up in apartheid Mississippi.
I was raised on a farm with my grandmother.
I was literally born in the year of desegregation. 5 years before, 3 years before, 2 years before, nobody would have even had the hope that my life could have been any different. I thought that I was going to be a teacher. I'd already been working in radio since I was 16. So I started getting calls about my freshman year to come into television. So I started in 19, became an anchor immediately afterwards.
Thanks, Joe. A politician will do almost anything during an election year.
Reporting wasn't for me, but I had my father, I had my friends, everybody was saying, oh my God, you're an anchor woman, you're on TV, I mean, you can't give up that job. I was torn between what the world was saying to me and what I felt to be the truth for myself. And I started to just, inside myself, think, what do I really want to do, what I really want to do. So they put me on this talk show, and the moment I sat on the talk show, I knew that I had found home for myself. So when I got the call to come to Chicago, I knew that it was the right thing to do. Every single person, except my best friend Gail, said you're going to fail. Every single person, when I left, my bosses said, you're gonna fail, Chicago's a racist city, you're black, you're not gonna make it. Everything. And I said, no, if I fail, then I will find out what is the next thing for me. After 25 years of success on the show, I started to feel I haven't done what I ultimately came to do. There still is a supreme moment of destiny that awaits me.
Well, a supreme moment of destiny. She's already incredibly rich and famous. So what does she mean? Does she mean the presidency? Let's go to our panel. Samara, Scott, Laurie, you can't deny she has an incredible story. But which of you here thinks, raise your hand if you do, that she will run in 2020? Okay, we've got a maybe.
How many hands?
We've got a maybe from Scott. What makes you think she might run?
I think that line you got, she's searching for destiny, is the sign that Oprah is passionate about wanting to be an activist. And this comes at a time in America, a very deeply divided America. She sees herself as a uniter. I think the reason why she may not run is the question of the grind of the campaign. She will be running not only against possibly Donald Trump, but an establishment Democratic Party that will say to her, well, you haven't been in this game before, why should you be back? Yeah.
Okay, let's just bounce it over quickly to Laurie. Just briefly, why do you think she won't run?
Oh, I think that the rigor of a campaign, I agree with Scott there, may be too much. I think Oprah Winfrey's great strength in the political arena is through endorsements. I think that a significant portion of the population will follow Oprah's recommendation.
Samara, just briefly, very briefly, why do you think she won't run?
Well, if there's one thing I learned in 2016, it's that I'm not going to make any predictions. But I will say that, you know, we're almost 3 years out from the election. So at this point, and it's really anybody's guess. This far out before the 2016 election, we didn't even know Trump was running at all, let alone that he would actually become the nominee and then the president.
Okay, a little too early to tell. And she's also given this statement a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it was back in December to InStyle magazine. She says, I've always felt very secure and confident with myself in knowing what I could and could not do, presumably. And so it's not something that interests me. I don't have the DNA for it, of course. But a few weeks after giving that statement, that interview, she made a very rousing speech, didn't she, at the Golden Globes. And there it was all about racial and gender inequality, which got people talking. And her partner, we have a picture of him here, Stedman Graham, then said, you know, it's really up to the people. Well, let's imagine what an Oprah for President campaign would look like.
It's one that transcends any culture, geography, race, religion, politics, or workplace. They are domestic workers and farm workers. They are working in factories and they work in restaurants and they're in academia and engineering and medicine and science. They're part of the world of tech and politics and business. There are athletes in the Olympics and there are soldiers in the military. The new day is on the horizon.
Well, that last bit there of the ad was from the Golden Globes, and that was the speech that really roused the interest of everyone. Samara Klar, just to come back to you briefly, you know, she does sound presidential at the end there. Are you sure she's not just warming up the crowd for a big 2020 run?
Listen, I'm not sure of anything anymore in politics, but I can tell you her biggest appeal probably to the American public is that she isn't particularly partisan, and that is something that both Republicans and Democrats really value in a candidate, and we've seen that in recent years. So she doesn't come out of the establishment, and that would work in her favor. It certainly would. Okay, well, let's put another vote to the panel. Raise your hand if you think that Oprah could make a good president if she did run. One, right in the middle there from Professor Scott. Lucas, iffy from Samara Klar. Laurie Laird, firmly, hands down. What's going on?
Listen, do not take my lack of endorsement of Oprah for president as a lack of admiration for this woman and what she has achieved. But I suspect that America will have fatigue with showbiz presidents. I suspect the next president could be more of a technocrat. Not sure which party is in the ascendant right now. Too early to tell that, but it will certainly be a figure who has demonstrated they can work across the aisle. That said, I think if Oprah were minded to run, that the Democratic establishment would salivate to get her on board. She's a nationally recognizable name.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I think if there is another candidate who comes forth, say like an Obama figure from within the party that Oprah could endorse, that's actually what the party would hope for. But I think on the question, would Oprah make a good president? When you elect a president, you don't just elect the person, you elect a group of people around them. And I think the question is whether you get Oprah bringing in figures from business, figures from the foreign policy community, figures from communities across America dealing with housing, education, health. And if she presents herself as part of a team, her personality matched up to expertise, then I think that's a presidency that would be worth considering.
I think you're agreeing with that. Are you, Samara?
Well, you know, I think both Scott and Laurie are raising interesting points. You know, at this point, up until this point over the last 10 years or so, we've really seen that voters here do not want establishment candidates. But after Trump, we'll see if that changes, if maybe he'll have satiated their desire for an outsider and they will want to return to somebody more establishment.
Okay, now you mentioned Trump. Actually, journalists asked the President of the United States if he thought he could beat Oprah. Here's his response.
Yeah, I'll beat Oprah. Oprah would be a lot of fun. I know her very well. You know, I did one of her last shows. She had Donald Trump, this is before politics, her last week. And she had Donald Trump and my family. It was very nice. No, I like Oprah. I don't think she's going to run.
Well, the weird thing is, of course, if you rewind a few years, you've got a lovely picture of Donald Trump and Oprah Winfrey together. And in those days, of course, when asked who would be his ideal vice president, his running mate, he said Oprah, of course. Let's talk about whether or not the American people would like her to run. We've been around Washington. Here's a few of their responses.
Any celebrity running purely on celebrity is a bad idea.
I think it's time that we let people who know government and politics do what it takes to run the country.
I think she'll be great. She proved to be a very smart woman, hardworking. She cares about issues that are important for the American people.
Oh, I think she'll beat Trump. I'd vote for her.
I think she's fantastic, but yeah, we need some people that are not entertainers in the White House.
Oprah, let's see you over there.
There you go, a bit of a mixed reaction there. Well, she certainly has the personal fortune to run and would have plenty left over. She's actually the richest African-American in history. There she is. She's got close to $3 billion. There's Michael Jordan with $1 billion and $780 million. Dr. Dre, not a real doctor, of course. Well, there you go. Laurie, we've got a woman there who's preeminent for once, and that must be a big selling point.
Well, I think there are two selling points. One is that she is a woman. The other is that Oprah Winfrey will appeal to African Americans as well.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that had African Americans turned out to vote in 2016 in the same proportion they turned out in 2008 and 2012 in certain swing states, Wisconsin in particular, we may not be looking at Donald Trump in the White House. So
they just weren't that enthusiastic about Hillary. Is that right, Scott Lucas?
Oh, I think that's absolutely right. But I think there's an interesting moment in that clip of Trump that I want to put to the rest of the panelists, and that is, here's the difference between Trump and Oprah and why she may be able to run. When Trump spoke, you notice it was all about him. I was on Oprah's show. When Oprah speaks, it's all about all of us. She's got that type of language. So even if I think Trump has poisoned the well in some respect for celebrities, if someone can get beyond celebrity and talk about us rather than just about me, she might have a shot.
Samara, that's you deal with the psychology of voters. That's true, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's true, I suppose, that if African-American voters had supported Clinton more, she might have won. But one could say that about a lot of voters. If, as Scott said, if white women had not voted for Trump, Clinton would have won. So I think there's a lot of different demographic groups that could have come out to make a difference. And Oprah Winfrey would probably appeal to a lot of them. She may appeal to women, although I haven't seen really any evidence in my own research that women are willing to cross the partisan aisle to support other women. So it's not clear that she would really help with that vote.
Okay, Samara, thank you very much. Well, some people say she's already more powerful than the president. Why would she want to run? I mean, it's a bit of a joke, but she does have tremendous influence. Let's look at what's called the Oprah effect now. Now, that's defined as the power of Oprah's opinion and endorsement to influence public opinion. Here's 3 examples for you. We've got what happened to beef prices after she said she'd never eat another hamburger again because of the mad cow disease. Those prices sank to a 10-year low. That was in 1996. Now, Toni Morrison's book's got a bigger sales boost from her endorsement than from being awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. And here's the final one here. Look at this. Weight Watchers. The stock doubled when it was announced that she was buying a 10% stake. How powerful is she now, and how do you rank people's power and influence anyway?
Well, I mean, she is so very powerful, and I'll take the statement you made and say she is more powerful where she sits now than she is at president or a potential president. Let's look at Donald Trump right now. He has been unable to get any significant legislation passed, save tax reform. He does not know how to work with Congress. Part of that is inexperience. Part of that is his personality. But Donald Trump came to the presidency the way one of my kids would, which is, what do you mean I'm president and I can't do anything I want? I'm president, for heaven's sake. And Oprah, the system is set so that the president must work with the legislature and must be checked by the court system. Oprah Winfrey, where she is now, has none of those constraints. And I'll echo what Scott said. I mean, as an endorser, that's where her power lies.
As an endorser. Okay, well, let's go to perhaps her ultimate endorsement, which was for Barack Obama when he first ran for president. Listen to this.
The reason I love Barack Obama is because he speaks to the potential inside of every one of us. Each one of us has a calling and a potential here on earth to do the good and the great thing. He knows that.
Well, let's go to Scott Lucas again, Professor of American Studies. Is she really best placed as the kingmaker rather than the king?
It depends. Let's link the past with the present. You know, when Oprah endorsed Obama, she was passionate about Obama throughout his 8 years. And that belief was, you remember, you know, hope and change. Now, a lot of that has been dashed within, 12 months by Trump. Now, if there is someone who comes out of the Democratic Party, let's say a rising star like Kamala Harris, for example, who Oprah could endorse, then that could be a very powerful combination. But if no one comes out from within the Democratic Party, if it appears that the party is unsettled, that they are divided, that they really don't have that unifying force, you know, people start whispering in her ear, you're the one that can bring hope and change back. That's a powerful siren call.
Yes, okay, fair enough. Samara, I just want to come back to you. The endorsement is said for Barack Obama to have given him about 1 million votes. Is that verified? Is that actually a fact?
No, there's really no way for us to know. We can't really quantify how many people voted for Barack Obama because they're following Oprah's recommendation. I mean, I agree that she does have a certain amount of influence, and she may help some people decide who their preferred candidate should be. But, you know, I think there's a lot of Americans who are, as we saw in some of these interviews you showed earlier on the show, a little tired of sort of celebrities and entertainers trying to get out of their, drive out of their lane and make comments about politics where perhaps they don't really belong.
Okay, let's have a look at another one of these sort of Oprah phenomena now. We've looked at the Oprah effect. What about Oprahfication? What does that even mean? Let's take a look. Oprahfication, the perceived increase in people's desire to discuss their emotions or personal problems publicly. Now, this isn't just about her talk show. She actually seems to have changed the political landscape. Take a look at these 4 leaders, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and John Boehner and the former vice president there. They're all weeping. I have to come back to you, Scott Lucas. You know, these are all tough guys. They're tough politicians. And they're all crying. We've seen them here. Can you imagine presidents and speakers of the House and so on crying before the Oprah Winfrey era?
Well, we've got to be careful here. I think this goes beyond Oprah, and that is that there has been a change in politics in the past generation that, you know, just simply men being men and women being women and masculine and feminine isn't the way to go about it. But I come back to the fact that Trump has sort of changed the rules or tried to change the rules, which raises a question mark. You know, for Trump, it's always the aggressive behavior, my way or the highway. You're not going to see Donald Trump cry. You're not going to see Donald Trump say, I'm sorry. Now, opening up that possibility in politics to admit weakness or to admit, if not weakness, the ability to listen to others and to empathize, you know, that's a question beyond Oprah. That's a question really where the future of the U.S. goes, whoever stands for the White House in 2020.
Actually, Laurie, that's a very good point. We seem to think of this as a sort of a linear progression towards being able to relate to people and to empathize and to cry. Donald Trump looks more sort of an old-fashioned leader, doesn't he?
Well, I think that the Trump story has yet to be written, and I think Scott makes a very good point that the next president will be an anti-Trump. I think even Trump supporters are suffering from Trump fatigue. But on that issue of change, something struck me when you were playing those sound bites from Oprah Winfrey. I'm still willing to bet that she will not run. However, did any of you on the panel notice that her accent has changed? She sounded a lot more Southern when she was endorsing Barack Obama than she did when she did that amazing speech at the Grammys. Her accent is much, it's been ironed out of its regionalizations, which could possibly suggest that she is thinking about national office.
That's a very interesting point. Well, if she does run, she won't be the first person to go from star to power. Here's a list of our top 5.
In at 5, tough guy actor and director Clint Eastwood.
You could ask yourself the question, do I feel lucky?
And Clint was feeling pretty lucky in 1986 when he successfully ran for mayor of his adopted hometown, Carmel by the Sea. He was only in office for 2 years, but he kept a hand in politics. Siding with John McCain in 2012 against Barack Obama, Clint gave an imaginary Obama a dressing down in a weird speech to an empty chair.
I've got Mr. Obama sitting here.
A valiant effort, but Obama won. In at 4, pop star Sonny Bono.
I got you, babe.
He's still the only member of Congress to have ever had a #1 pop song in America. He split from his wife and singing partner Cher in 1975, but soon found a new love, politics.
Right Honorable Sonny Bono.
He ran for mayor of Palm Springs, California in 1988 after the local council frustrated his plans to open a restaurant. And he won. Bono then went one better and became a Californian congressman from 1995 until his death in 98. In at 3, Jesse the Body Ventura. Jesse enjoyed a long career as a professional wrestler. He also had a few small but cool parts in films like Predator.
I ain't got time to bleed.
But in 1989, Ventura ran a no-nonsense campaign against the Democrats and Republicans to become the governor of Minnesota.
I promise you I will do the best job that I can do.
He was an outsider, spoke bluntly to reporters, and urged people not to vote for politics as usual. And he won. Sounds familiar? In at 2, the governator himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Not content with being the most successful bodybuilder and highest paid movie star, he also became governor of America's most populous state, California, in 2003. That's after the people there voted to recall the incumbent, a total recall, you might say. He'd never held public office before, but was the best-known candidate. He's had his critics, including Donald Trump, who tweeted Arnie did a really bad job as governor. But the running man must have done something right. He won 2 terms. If he'd been born in America, perhaps he'd have been president.
Hey Donald, I have a great idea. Why don't we switch jobs?
And finally, the king of the political jungle, the 40th president of the United States, Ronald Reagan.
You want to forget years of persecuting a girl whose only crime was growing up to be fine and decent?
For 3 decades, Ronnie acted his heart out alongside screen legends like Humphrey Bogart. But unlike Bogey, he never became a huge star. He was, though, wildly popular with voters, winning 2 terms as governor of California. Then 2 terms as US president, easily beating Jimmy Carter in 1980, winning 44 out of 50 states to become America's oldest elected president. And then he destroyed Walter Mondale in '84, winning every state except Mondale's home state of Minnesota. It was the largest electoral college victory in history. His fans credit him with everything from ending the Cold War,
we have made history,
to saving the US economy. And when he left office in 1989, he enjoyed an approval rating of 68%, around twice as much as Donald Trump, who's barely had a year in office.
Scott Lucas, if I could start with you, do you think that the United States is, in this sort of social media age, moving more and more towards having stars as politicians because they have greater recognition?
Well, I think America's always been a country where you've had spectacle and celebrity, so it's not entirely part of this age. But with social media, news travels so fast, disinformation and real information travels so fast that that illusion is powerful. And I do think that when people can't get a grasp on issues, sentiment matters. And I think it opens up the space, despite everything we've heard, for someone who is not a politician to be in the White House in 2020.
Laurie?
It just won't be Donald Trump.
I think with this discussion of Oprah and a potential presidential run that we're skipping over the big elephant in the room, which is race. Donald Trump's presidency has exposed so many unhealed rifts on race in the U.S. And were Oprah Winfrey to consider a run, she's going to have problems with that demographic that brought Trump into office, which is white men. We talked about white women voting for Trump, but that lightly educated white male contingent may struggle to vote for an Oprah Winfrey, and I think that's important.
Samara, what does your research tell you about this?
If there's one thing I've found really consistently in my work, it's that the more that the parties attack each other, the more hostility there is in Washington, the more Americans just want a candidate who is not associated with either party at all. That's why we have so many Americans who just tell pollsters that they're independent.
Well, one final question we did pose at the beginning of the show: who is richer, Donald or Oprah? Now, if you go on the internet, Forbes is suggesting that Donald has 3.1 and Oprah has around about 2.9. Let's go to Laurie, the final word on this. Who's richer, the Donald or Oprah?
I'm going to bet Oprah. I think if the Donald were richer, he'd let us see his tax returns.
Ooh, okay. Thank you very much. The last word there going to Laurie Laird and Scott Lucas and Samara Klar. Thank you all very much for your contributions to the Nexus today. Well, that is all for this week. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at the leader, arguably, of the world's biggest economy. And I don't mean Donald Trump. Thanks for watching. See you then.